This week's lecture focuses on effective pedagogy in the English classroom, as well as looking at your assessment too, where you will be developing learning experiences. The purpose of this lecture is to explain what good teaching looks like in the early years of learning. It also explores how to develop an effective learning experience and shares ideas for quality resources that you can use for your assessment. Places like Scootle, The Learning Place, and this website listed here can give you some excellent ideas that you can use. This week, your readings are chapters 4 and 18 from the Hill textbook. These chapters focus on appropriate methods for the teaching of literacy in the early years of schooling. This is often based on a scaffolded approach. In addition, play and arts-based learning is essential for young children. Using children's literature in the classroom is vital for literacy development. In the beginning, teachers usually provide full support to students by reading books aloud to the classes. This encourages a love for reading and makes children feel safe in the classroom environment, particularly if they've had this type of experience at home, or alternatively, if they haven't, as it's very important for their literacy development. Similarly, in the teaching of writing, good teachers model the types and styles of writing required. They share examples of both good and bad writing and discuss why these samples are this way. The next sequential stage is often sharing both the reading and writing process. I've had a number of wonderful times with my classes where we wrote stories collaboratively. It also encourages children to work together and have a sense of teamwork. Shared reading is also good as it allows children to take turns, teaching them responsibility, patience, and support. Guided reading and writing is important as it provides the opportunity for students to work in ability groups or groups structured thoughtfully by the teacher that provide supportive and inclusive environments for those students who may have special learning needs. Of course, this all leads to students reading and writing independently. However, as you can see with this model, the process is cyclical and returns back to read alouds or shared or guided reading where appropriate. Even upper primary students like to have stories read to them. When you use literature in the classroom, it is important that you vary the learning activities and strategies that you use. Hill provides an effective format for using shared books in the classroom on page 84. It includes reading together, providing a number of teaching opportunities, how you introduce a new book to the class, and different types of learning activities. I would absolutely recommend reading this section for your assessment too. Pages 84 to 87 explain some more effective teaching approaches that you can draw on for assessment too. Make sure you think about the before, during, and after reading stages. How will your activities be different? How will they align with a philosophy or theory of teaching, such as the Learning by Design model or a multi-literacies framework? Remember to consider also the productive pedagogies as well. We need to see how your learnings from this course can be influenced and embedded in your learning experiences. What about aspects of reading that you're focusing on? Are you teaching rhyming or comprehension, phonics, vocabulary, or fluency? You need to be very clear on what aspect of reading you will address. Make this explicit from the beginning of the learning experience. In regard to writing, will the writing learning experience relate to your reading one, or are they focusing on different elements in your book? Either of those is fine. Will you employ the 4 resource model? How will your learning experiences support the development of language generally? So these are all questions that you need to ask yourself when developing the learning experiences. I definitely recommend reading page 92 to 95 as well, because this will guide you. So, what do effective literacy programs look like in early years classrooms? Well, on page 100, Hill does provide an example of a week-long literacy program. Here you can see the children are focusing on the book The Gingerbread Man. On the first day, the teacher actually starts with asking the children about their own experiences or their topics of interest. This is where the teacher models some writing, and the children can recount experiences through writing or drawing. So, if you're focusing on a prep class, drawing is an absolutely okay task for writing, and you may get the children then to write a little short sentence with it. Because remember, in the Australian curriculum English, there's a lot of focus on multimodal texts. On the second day, the teacher you can see here has used the 4 resource model. They use text user activities. They also have varied learning centre activities, so like our literacy rotations that we did earlier in the course. Guided reading also happens in small groups. This is where, if you decide to have group work, you need to tell us how you've considered grouping the children. You don't need to put too much information, but just enough so we can see that you've actually thought about that. The next day, it's looking at writing direct speech. Of course, in the Gingerbread Man, there's a lot of characters talking, so this is a great opportunity to talk about direct speech. They also use readers' theatre, where the children act out the story. On Thursday, there's a close activity, some more guided reading. And Friday, they actually make a gingerbread man together and they write a procedure for writing this. So you can see some very interesting and different activities across the week, but it's all based on the one story. So that's an excellent literacy program. Last week, we looked at how to group students in the tutorial. Chapter 18 focuses on this topic more. The way in which you group students is extremely important in literacy, if not all learning. Key considerations include positive interdependence, common goals, heterogeneous groups, which means mixed groups, mixed ability, changing the membership of groups, not always having the same groups across the week, shared leadership, group and individual responsibility, and also cooperative skills are taught. So we looked at how you can group according to personality, according to friendship groups. Perhaps you might look at gender. Do you want just boys in one group or a mixed group? Putting children who are independent with ones that aren't so independent and they work together. Or you could do some ability grouping as well. But the evidence shows that having children in ability groups all the time actually isn't good for learning generally. Remember, if we don't want to see a lot about how you group in the learning experiences, just as long as you've actually considered it, and we would like to see some group work happening. On page 408 to 402, Hill actually lists a number of strategies that you can consider to use throughout your learning experience. Activities such as a quick whip around or numbered heads, think, pair, share, red light, green light thinking, using Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats, huddle, round table, a 3-step interview. Hill actually explains each of these in depth, so you can read these and see which ones you might like to use. It's okay to take ideas from other people as long as you reference these in your assessment. There are lots of resources online as well, and you will see that I've saved some also. So don't try to reinvent everything. Absolutely try and use some of these activities, and as long as you reference it, that's fine. So let's talk a little bit more about assessment 2. So this assessment is a culmination of all the learnings from the course. You need to develop 2 learning experiences, one that's focused on reading and the other one focused on writing. Now, these aren't complete lessons. We're not expecting you to do lesson plans. So these learning experiences might only be 20 minutes or up to 30 minutes. So we will be looking for how you've applied the lectures, the textbook reading, and the other readings and other learning materials throughout these experiences. So, it would be really great to see that you're using the four resource model. You don't have to necessarily focus in on the theory that you use for assessment one, although that might be quite a good idea because you actually know a lot more about it now. And we also need to see some explicit instruction. You, as the teacher, how are you teaching the children new skills and how are you embedding a differentiated approach? This means looking at addressing each of the children's needs. So, when developing your learning experiences, your learning needs to be clear and sequential. Phases of the learning often include orientating, enhancing, and synthesizing. Now, orientating is also known as build the field knowledge or experiencing. Enhancing is known as conceptualizing and analyzing. And synthesizing is also known as applying. Remember the learning by design model we explored last week in tutorials? This model recognizes social, cultural, and cognitive differences among learners, and it focuses on four knowledge processes. So, when you begin your learning experiences, ask the children what they already know. This is called experiencing the known. And then you start to introduce new information. You work from what the students bring to the classroom to then bridge to new ideas, concepts, and knowledge. The next phase would be trying to get a little bit deeper with this knowledge, conceptualizing by naming and theorizing. This is where you introduce new vocabulary. So you assist understanding by naming and grouping and linking. And this builds deeper understandings of the how and why of things. Analyzing functionally and critically considers information for its value through to its intent, impact, and influence. It's really important to get to these deeper levels in any learning experience that you plan for the classroom. And then the final phase is often applying. This is where the children actually make something or create something themselves. So they will do a little written text, they might do some drawing, they might do some readers' theatre or acting. So they use the knowledge that you've given them at the beginning of the lesson to apply that and show their understanding. I've uploaded a folder of resources that you can draw on when developing your learning experiences. As I said, it's totally fine to use teaching ideas that are available on the web, and these websites are excellent resources and reputable as well. Just make sure you reference it, and all you need to do is put that in a bibliography at the end. So we will see in the originality through your Turnitin whether or not you've actually referenced other work. So make sure you do that. But of course, don't just take one whole learning experience and submit that. We want to see that you've actually really thought about it, used different ideas from different places, and developed your own exciting experience around reading and writing based on one children's book. The purpose of this lecture is to continue our focus on effective teaching strategies in the classroom. Therefore, the learning outcomes include planning and managing literacy learning in the early years, which focuses on classroom management and behaviour management, designing a literacy curriculum, which includes setting up your classroom, distinct spaces, and resources required. Good teachers are good planners and managers. Planning your classroom activities takes time. So does managing your classroom. You also need to think very clearly about how you will do this. What will your classroom feel like? What will it sound like? What will it look like? Will your classroom feel like where children's questions can be valued, that they feel comfortable to ask a question that challenges a point of view, that the other children respond courteously and they respect different views? Will it sound like students taking initiative for asking questions, that they're able to ask different types of questions, that they respond positively to each other, and they seek clarification when they need more detail? What will it look like? Will children listen attentively to questions, engage with each other's responses? Will there be consideration given to these responses? Will there be think time? What about an ideas centered discussion rather than a teacher or student one? Remember, looks like is also about the physical space. How will you set up your classroom space so that it is an exciting and educational environment for learning? On your observation prac next semester, I would recommend being mindful of how your supervising teacher manages the classroom. For example, how do they transition from one activity to the next? Do they have clear set goals and expectations, or is it quite chaotic? Do the children know what the rules and management of the classroom is like? These are all really important to consider. Do you think they do it effectively? If so, why? What are the strategies that they use? And if not, why? What are they doing? And how could they improve that practice? How does your supervising teacher plan for classroom learning? Find out as much information as possible. Do they have unit plans for the term? Do they do lesson plans? If it's a more experienced teacher, they might not do lesson plans for every activity, but they'll probably have a very good idea about what they're going to do. How do they group the students in their classroom? Do they vary this? Do they take into account the different learning needs in the classroom? What sort of activities do they do? Also, are these varied? Or do they do the same types of things throughout the week, and could they make it a little bit more interesting? So, your observation prac will be a great opportunity to see not only your supervising teacher, but I'd recommend looking at other teachers in practice as well. Behaviour management is another area very important to consider. Many prac students find dealing with difficult behaviours challenging. It will be important for you to think about ways in which you'll be able to manage this. Therefore, in your first prac, take the opportunity to observe a number of teachers. Don't just stay in your one classroom. Go to the music lesson, go to the art lesson, and the PE lesson. How does the PE teacher manage behaviour in an outdoor environment? Remember, this is just the beginning for you, so it's small steps at a time. But effective classroom and behaviour management means that effective learning can take place for all children. I would like you now to pause the lecture to watch the following YouTube clips. They offer some ways in which you can set your classroom up, and also some behaviour management strategies. You might actually agree or disagree with some of the suggestions, and the first one in particular is an American context, so it might not apply as much to the Australian, but there's some really great ideas. So pause it now and see what you think. Aside from classroom and behaviour management, as a teacher, you'll also be managing the curriculum planning throughout the year for your class or classes. There are three main ways to plan literacy curriculum. You can do this based on subject areas where you have a separate time block for each curriculum area. So, for example, science might occur on a Thursday morning and the arts might be Friday afternoon. It could be multidisciplinary, where the teacher chooses particular topics for study, and each curriculum area might focus on those topics. So, water or bears, for example, and I'll explain this a little bit further later on. Or it could be integrated, which actually draws on the children's own interests. We did this one year where the kids, one of the children brought in some silkworms. So you'll find in prep that that's quite a big topic where you look at life cycles and you can actually buy little chrysalis and the butterflies will open or chickens will hatch from eggs. And that was integrated through everything that they do, not just like a multidisciplinary approach. So, this is similar to learning by design or problem based learning. You start with a hypothetical question in mind and dig deeper to find out more information, and critical higher order thinking is very important in an integrated curriculum approach. There is evidence to suggest that an integrated curriculum is more authentic for children in the early years, if not across the school years. This enables a consolidation of knowledge and information. It actually makes sense to teach around topics because children are then able to make connections across the curriculum domains. It's not just siloed where you do maths at this time and you do science at this time. There are some overlaps there. So the water unit that I was talking about, that was really exciting and encouraging for the children in my classroom. We learnt about the composition of water and its features in science. We learnt about conservation, drought and floods in geography. We explored how people respected and worshipped water in different civilizations in history. And in the arts, we got to express our feelings and ideas where we created some music and movement and art around the water cycle. Composing the music was really quite profound, I thought, in terms of that topic. So this week in the tutorials, excuse me, we'll be actually rounding off the semester with a fun activity. Often pre-service teachers express their desire to know more about how to set up a classroom, particularly at the beginning of a school year. And that's really difficult to see that happening in schools because pracs normally don't start at the beginning of a school year. So we'll therefore be thinking about spaces in the classroom and their use. It can be actually really fun and exciting. So this space here you can see actually has quite a lot of floor space available for the children to do work in different areas. It's very colourful, there's artwork hanging on the floor, and it gives them the opportunity to move around and mix up the groupings as well. Here you can see a homeroom corner. So there's some cooking equipment, there's a doll and a bed, there's some books that they can do, they can sit and read quietly. Having little spaces like this is really important in the early years to create imagination, and also that encourages development of oral language and effective communication with each other. Here again, it's really great to display the children's work around the classroom. You can see lots of artwork here. And when the parents come in, they can actually look around and see what the children have been doing in class. Again, there's some nice big spaces here, some actual desks as well. So it really does depend on what kind of resources you have available, but it's really great to think of different ways to set up that space. So these images all are from Pinterest. I totally recommend signing up there because there's some fantastic examples, including volcanoes and rainforests. And I remember one year during Book Week, our librarian's husband actually made a spaceship where the kids could actually sit in and read books. Other things you need to consider is how the children will work and developing routines for them. So here you can see that they've actually allocated different groups, yellow, red and blue, and they already know about the literacy rotations that they might be doing. So instead of having to explain those rules and regulations every time you do it, the children just need to refer back to this document and they know exactly where to go. And of course, those groupings should change regularly. Children may not stay in the yellow group forever, so think about that as well. So as I said, Pinterest actually gives you some really great examples, but of course there'll be other images online that where you could gather some evidence and inspiration to how you might set up your space. So to finish off this course, I'd really like to thank you all for your participation and enthusiasm throughout the semester. I've regularly received emails from students saying how much they're enjoying the learning, and in particular the tutors and the textbook. It's been a fantastic resource. I wish you all the best for the rest of your first year here at Griffith, and I really look forward to seeing you all again in second semester next year. And thank you also to all my tutors. My team has been amazing and they're really supportive. They're so experienced, and you're very lucky to have been able to have them this semester too. Thank you.